Fear of being alone can make people choose the wrong partner, and sometimes they stay, enduring cruelty, jealousy, and even physical abuse. Too often, these real-life stories end in tragedy. On June 27, 2021, 31-year-old Evgenia Kolmykova, née Pashkova, disappeared in Segezha, Karelia. She was a devoted mother to 2 young daughters from her first marriage. After her disappearance, the girls went to live with their grandmother, Evgenia's elderly mother, Lidia Pashkova. Evgenia worked as a sales clerk at Magnit, living an ordinary life that would be shattered in a moment. Hi everyone, Alex here, and you're watching Criminal Stories. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode. Now, let's get into it. The last person to see Evgenia alive was her friend, Maria Slesser, who had visited her the day before she vanished. That same day, she was picked up by her 41-year-old partner, Vladimir Lindov. The couple had lived together for 4 years. Evgenia had hoped to start a new life with him, sending her daughters to stay with their grandmother. Those close to her say Vladimir often became violent. They drank together, and arguments frequently turned physical during those sessions. Earlier that day, Evgenia spoke with her mother on the phone. Nothing seemed unusual. She mostly asked about her daughters, her voice calm and normal. But behind closed doors, the reality was different. A neighbor recalled seeing Evgenia cry often. No one knows if she ever called the police during the fights, though her mother mentioned that Evgenia had filed reports multiple times, only to later retract them. Vladimir didn't hesitate to strike her, even when her mother was present. Every detail paints a picture of fear and control, a life under constant threat, where tragedy was always lurking just around the corner. After Evgenia went missing, her mother and friend, Angelina Golovanova, posted messages on social media asking for help in finding her. But it didn't happen immediately. At first, Lidia Pashkova didn't worry about her daughter's absence, assuming she had just gone out for a while. After 5 days, however, her concern grew. She went to Evgenia and Vladimir's apartment, but no one answered the door. That's when Lidia wrote a note. "If you don't show up, I will report you missing to the police." Later, Evgenia's mother managed to reach Vladimir by phone, but he claimed he didn't know where his common-law wife was. He thought she had gone to her mother's house. The social media posts quickly drew many responses and comments. Opinions were divided. Some suggested removing the posts, claiming Evgenia had run off with someone to Turkey, though it was unclear where this rumor came from. But the majority of responses were sympathetic. Meanwhile, Lidia officially filed a missing person report with the police. Local residents organized a search team, unsure if the authorities were actively looking for the young woman. The formation of the group was announced in the community page Segezha Listens. Several dozen women joined the volunteer effort, distant relatives, Evgenia's school friends, and others who simply wanted to help. Segezha is a single industry town in Karelia with a population of around 25,000. It's about a 3-hour drive from the capital, Petrozavodsk. The town sits on marshy land near Lake Vigozero, fed by a local river. Nearby, there's also an abandoned village. 300 years ago, Emperor Peter I stopped there with his regiment. In 1942, a field hospital was set up in the village, which was later burned down by the Finnish army, killing 85 people inside. Wildfire fireweed grows all around Segezha. It's everywhere, along the roads, behind abandoned garages, and in the summer, it blooms. Against fields of bright purple flowers, the gray panel apartment buildings of the town look particularly stark. On the shores of Lake Vigozero stands a pulp and paper mill, which employs many of Segezha's residents. The mill belches smoke, and the snow around it turns yellow. 2 years ago, locals complained about a mass die-off of birds near the plant. Still, the mill is practically the town's only source of work, and life here would be difficult without it. Of course, other options exist: working on the railway or at Correctional Colony Number 7. Incidentally, Ildar Dedin was imprisoned there. He wrote letters describing systematic torture. Another option is working as a store clerk, like Evgenia Kolmykova did. She had quit a year earlier, living off alimony from her ex-husband and occasional financial help from her parents. Day and night, the volunteers discussed the progress of the search and shared ideas about what to do next. None of them had any formal experience in searches, so they started by checking social media posts for sightings of girls who matched Evgenia's description. Then they scoured the surrounding areas. Recently, 2 bodies had been pulled from the swamp and the lake, so caution was high. The search went on for more than a month. Every day the women went out looking, posting missing person notices and combing the terrain. One volunteer recalled that they were poking wells and pits with sticks, checking every possible hiding place. The searches covered the forests around town, the lake shore, the sawmill near the sports complex, old Segezha, the railway bridge, Evgenia's mother's dacha, and along the bypass road. But all efforts came up empty. The first real breakthrough came when Evgenia Kolmykova's keys were found. The discovery was announced in one of the local community groups. Since Segezha is a small town, cases like this aren't unheard of. If someone loses something, it's almost certain that another local will find it and return it. That's exactly what happened this time. Marina Gordienko found Evgenia's keys in a vacant lot near the train station. The announcement reached Vladimir Lindov, whom Gordienko knew personally. He claimed the keys belonged to his wife, and Marina returned them to him. But the searches in the lots around the station still turned up nothing else. Throughout this time, Evgenia's mother, Lidia Pashkova, stayed in close contact with the investigator handling the case. He explained that the case was very complicated, as too much conflicting information was coming in about where Evgenia might be. In a typical missing person case, investigators check available surveillance cameras, search the apartment, interview relatives, and review phone records. But according to the officers, they had very limited resources to work with. Lydia said that at first, they tried to track Evgenia through various databases. Her partner was scheduled for a polygraph, but for some reason it couldn't be conducted immediately. It's still unclear whether it was ever done. Later, investigators from Petrozavodsk checked phone calls and bank card transactions. Eventually, Evgenia's phone was located. It had been found by some local boys near Lake Vigozero and taken into custody by the authorities. People requested assistance from a canine unit, but initially it was denied. However, the authorities eventually got involved in the search. In a statement, the press service confirmed that the investigation was ongoing, but emphasized that officers were not permitted to comment on the progress of the inquiry. Elena Primak, Evgenia's first husband's cousin who had taken part in the search, said, "It's emotionally exhausting to search for someone. It was terrifying. What if we found a body?" But there were also those who remained hopeful. One volunteer jokingly said, "If Evgenia turns up alive, I'll personally tear her head off." The search was difficult. Every tip about women who looked like Evgenia was checked, but most turned out to be dead ends. At one point, a local resident told the Segezha search group that there was no need to look for her. She had supposedly gone north with a man, but had already returned. Other reports claimed she had been seen in the forest with a bottle of alcohol. All of these tips proved false. The searchers even faced interference. One man, a neighbor of Evgenia's, began taking down the missing person posters around town for no clear reason. A complaint was filed with the police, but nothing came of it. Volunteer Oksana said another woman, who had previously served time for murder, became involved in the case. She was the last person to answer Evgenia's phone at one point. Initially, she cooperated with the volunteers, but then she stopped communicating. The police, for reasons unknown, did not detain her, and it's unclear whether she was ever questioned. Almost everyone became a suspect at some point, especially Evgenia's partner, Vladimir Lindov. Volunteers went to his garage, knocked on doors. What if Evgenia was there, beaten and locked away? They inspected the grass around the property to see if it had been trampled. At one point, the entire town joined the search. Even school children helped. Psychics and clairvoyants were called in. One of them insisted the search should focus near the water. Meanwhile, Vladimir continued his outings with friends. On July 5th, he posted the status, "In vain," on his social media page, Vkontaktia. On the evening of July 28th, Evgenia's body was found in a lake near Maiguba station in the Segezha district. The grim discovery was reported by a friend of Evgenia's who had taken part in the search. Evgenia's partner confessed to the murder, which was driven by jealousy. This was confirmed by her mother, Lidia Pashkova. He wrapped her body in a blanket and hid it in a small cabinet, then tried to sink the cabinet in the lake. But the plan failed. The furniture floated to the surface, and even divers were not needed. Family friends say that he often physically abused Evgenia. They believe that during one of their arguments he misjudged his strength. She stopped breathing and died. The investigative committee has acknowledged this information, but has not yet commented on the man's confession. People are wondering why he wasn't immediately suspected, or why his garage wasn't searched sooner. During a reconstruction of the crime, Vladimir described how he killed his partner. It was extremely brutal. He became jealous over a phone call. He killed her at home, and she remained in the apartment for a full day with her injuries. The next day, Vladimir returned, stuffed her body, wrapped in a blanket, into a cabinet after removing the shelves, and a week later drove out of town and dumped it from a bridge into a body of water. When the police opened the cabinet, the killer was laughing. Shocked by the brutal murder, local residents organized a memorial fund and are raising money for the funeral of their fellow townswoman, as well as to support her mother, who is now left to care for her 2 granddaughters alone. A friend of the murdered Evgenia Kolmykova wrote, "Yesterday, unfortunately, hope of seeing our Evgenia alive vanished. And despite the horror of what has happened, my family and I want to thank everyone who helped in the search for Evgenia, who didn't leave us alone in this tragedy, and who continue to offer their support in any way they can."